My Cousin Vinny. Marisa Tomei was stripped of this. Almost 30 years after its first release, the 1992 legal comedy My Cousin Vinny remains one of the finest legal films ever. From Marisa Tomei's Mona Lisa Vito and Joe Pesci's Vinny Gambini's amazing performances to the legendary sequences that are still cited today, there's no question that this film is a comic masterpiece. Did you know, though, that some of the actors were not the producer's first choice? Or that many of the characters were based on real people? We're here to share all the juicy information, from sequences that were removed from the final take to blunders that made it into the film. How many of these secrets were you previously unaware of? The film was inspired by a random meeting. Can you believe screenwriter Dale Launer got the concept for the film from a chance meeting in real life? Launer met a person in the early 1970s who had taken the bar and was waiting to hear the results. When Launer asked the prospective lawyer what would happen if he didn't pass, he said he'd simply take it again until he did. He then asked the man how many times someone had failed the bar exam before passing, and the man replied 13 times. What if you've been accused of a crime, and obviously you have what looks to be the worst counsel in the country? He wondered, according to Abnormal Use. Vinny was inspired by men from Joe Pesci's neighborhood. There's no denying that Pesci was the perfect choice for the role of Vinny. Pesci created Vinny to be both outrageous and relatable. So how did he pull off the role so naturally? People Pesci knew when he was growing up served as inspiration for Vinny's persona. Pesci, a New Jersey native, says that individuals like Vinny were frequent in his area, and he ended up creating Vinny by pulling on his childhood experiences and blending the personalities and features of people he knew. The studio wanted to cut Mona Lisa Vito. My Cousin Vinny wouldn't be the same without Vinny's outspoken, jobless hairdresser and car expert girlfriend, Mona Lisa Vito, portrayed by Marisa Tomei. However, the company intended to remove the Mona Lisa from the script. To maintain the character, screenwriter Dale Launer reluctantly wrote a sequence in which she complains about not receiving enough attention. He didn't want the public to associate the Mona Lisa with the stereotype of a nagging girlfriend. You often see movies where a guy is hell-bent on doing something, and you're along for the ride, and his wife, girlfriend, or mother is feeling ignored. She also complains, and I despise it. Those sequences are absolutely tedious to watch. You wish to skip forward. Awful, he said to Abnormal Muse. Marisa Tomei's biological clock scene. Speaking of eliminating Tomei's Mona Lisa, the section that was added ended up being Launer's favorite part in the screenplay, the biological clock sequence. Mona Lisa laments to Vinny in the legendary moment that her biological clock is ticking and that she is yet to receive a marriage proposal. Vinny blames all of his issues on her after going on a tirade and moaning, and she ultimately apologizes for bringing it up, adding, "Maybe it was a horrible moment to bring it up." Robert De Niro was the first choice for Vinny. While it's difficult to picture anybody else as Vinny Gambini, Pesci wasn't really screenwriter Dale Launer's first choice. He believed Robert De Niro would be an excellent Vinny. On the other hand, the studio president believed De Niro, renowned for performing serious parts at the time, was not humorous. Worse, Launer said in an interview with Writer Unboxed that the president seemed uncomfortable and embarrassed when he offered De Niro the post. They had no idea that De Niro would go on to star in other comedy roles, including Meet the Parents, years later. Launer took a road trip to the South for research. Screenwriter Dale Launer traveled to the South to study Southern culture and customs in order to represent the people in the film correctly. According to his website profile, he leased a vehicle in New Orleans and traveled up through the Mississippi, over Alabama, and down the Gulf Coast. During the drive, he had a vehicle that got mired in the mud, grits were on the menu at every eatery, and he heard screaming owls, all of which became part of the screenplay. The studio took a risk casting Marisa Tomei. Tomei has built a reputation for herself since playing Mona Lisa Vito, but when the picture was released in the early 1990s, she hadn't appeared in many major films, and the production company was concerned that Tomei wasn't experienced enough. However, after seeing her performance on the set in the 1991 comedy Oscar, director Jonathan Lynn fell in love with how funny and brilliant she was. So he decided to take a risk and cast her. As soon as they filmed the opening scene in which Mona Lisa and Vinny arrive in Alabama and she tells Pesci, "Oh yes, you mix," Lynn knew he had made the correct decision, as he said in the DVD commentary. Mona Lisa's expert testimony. One of the film's most iconic scenes occurred when Tomei's Mona Lisa veto testimony. Mona Lisa's outstanding vehicle expertise, which astounds the jurors and judge, ends up playing a significant role in Vinny's first legal triumph. While Tomei steals the show in the film, it turns out that her testimony isn't entirely reliable. The Mona Lisa depicts two 1960s automobiles with positive traction and independent rear suspension, but there were really three. Surprisingly, screenwriter Dale Launer learned this from a high school acquaintance who attended the film's premiere. Whoops! The famous Utes scene was inspired by a real-life conversation. One of the most referenced passages in the film, it turns out, was based on a real-life exchange between director Jonathan Lynn and Joe Pesci. Utes occurred in a scene when Vinny and Judge Haller discussed two Utes as they were filming. Pesci mumbled something about two Utes who were on trial in his heavy New Jersey accent. Lynn responded with "what?" and Pesci responded with "what?" as well, which is precisely as the scenario occurred in the film. Vinny was supposed to be dyslexic. When Vinny revealed that he had to take the bar exam 6 times before passing, we were understandably perplexed as to how someone could pass so many times. The question was added in the original draft of the script. Originally, Vinny was supposed to be dyslexic, and when questioned why it took him 6 attempts to pass the bar, he answered, "I'm a bit dyslexic." However, Launer chose to remove it from the final screenplay because Pesci didn't know how to represent dyslexia, which irritated him since it made Vinny seem not so intelligent. You have no idea why he took so long to go past the bar. Then all of a sudden he begins behaving cleverly. You have to assume that he's a brilliant man and the law is simply complex and uninteresting, he stated to Abnormal Muse. The prison scenes were shot in real prison. The jail scenes looked to be so genuine because they were filmed at a real prison in Gainesville, Georgia. There was also a death row wing nearby where they were filming. The fact that the jail held actual criminals in solitary confinement and on death row terrified Ralph Macchio and Mitchell Winfield as they filmed the scenes with prison guards nearby. They were actually shouting at us. They had to tone down what they placed in the film because they were saying some heinous things. We were terrified, Whitfield told Abnormal Muse. Tomei heard about her Oscar nomination unexpectedly. Marisa Tomei demonstrated that she was the appropriate actor for the character of Mona Lisa Vito, winning an Oscar for her performance. When the actress learned she'd been nominated for an Oscar, she was resting on the sofa of a pregnant friend who was due any day. Her friends were watching TV in the room when they began yelling. Naturally, Tomei assumed her companion was in labor. She recalled David Letterman in 1993 saying, "Shouting from the next room woke me up. I had no idea she was going into labor or not." Tomei's Oscar conspiracy. Tomei was not only nominated for an Oscar, but she also won for Best Supporting Actress. Not long after she won, however, rumors began to circulate that Tomei had won by accident because presenter Jack Palance read the erroneous name while under the influence. While this makes a fantastic narrative, it is exceedingly improbable since the Academy has 2 officials waiting off stage, ready to intercede and read the proper name if this happens. It's only occurred once in history, when Warren Beatty was handed the erroneous card and Faye Dunaway declared La La Land as Best Picture instead of the winner, Moonlight.